Sons of the West, red, white, and blue. We come out snarling, Bulldogs through and through. Bulldogs fight and Bulldogs roar. We give our very best. 'Cause you can't beat the boys of the Bulldog breed. We're the team of the mighty West. 'Cause you can't beat the boys of the Bulldog breed. The team of the mighty
Hello Dogs fans, and welcome to another episode of After the Dogs Roar for season 2016. Now this episode is for after round 6. In this episode, of course, I'll review the loss to North Melbourne on Friday night. We returned to the Friday night stage, couldn't quite get the job done and lost by 16 points. I'll be dissecting that game, giving you my opinion on what went wrong and what we need to do to improve for next week. Of course, the goal kickers, best players to come in the review. Also coming up on the show, I'll be giving you my best and fairest votes for round 6. That's for the After the Dogs Best and Fairest award, which will be awarded to the best and fairest player who gets the most votes at the end of the season. Also going to be giving you a stats wrap up after round 6, of course. All the leading goals, disposals, marks, tackles, and of course where we stand on the AFL ladder. Now also coming up, I'm going to be giving you an overview of the VFL round 4 clash against Werribee. Did we win that one? Did we lose? What was the result? You'll have to find out a bit later on in the episode. That includes the goal kickers, best players, of course any injuries that came out of the game, and of course where we stand on the VFL ladder. Also going to give you the injury board after round 6. Also coming up, I've got the Bevis burning question, as well as a preview to round 7 v the Crows. And then we're going to end the show with questions in 3 minutes. Questions asked by the Western Bulldogs forum on Facebook. Let's get straight into having a look at Friday night's match against the Kangas. So of course, Friday night we returned to the Friday night stage for the first time since May 2012, where we lost to Geelong by 20 points. We're up against the Kangaroos. Of course, there is a bit of a bid that we may play the Kangaroos in a Good Friday blockbuster match next year. Not confirmed, but could happen. And this was, I guess, the trial for that game. But anyway, that's a bit off topic because we're talking about this game and how the Dogs went. And the Kangaroos, well, they got the first goal. The Dogs were able to hit back, but then the Kangaroos were able to get up to a 4-1 to 2-1 lead at quarter time. So that's a 2-goal lead to the Kangaroos at quarter time. At half time, we were still 2 goals down, 5-4 to 3-4. A few missed opportunities by the Dogs and a few inside 50s that we couldn't score from. It was actually pretty terrible and pretty depressing as well watching the game. We were then behind at 2 goals again at 3-quarter time. Can you believe it? Another 2-goal lead to the Kangaroos at 3-quarter time. Again, opportunities being wasted. We're going inside 50. The same old story really. We just couldn't get any score from an inside 50, or a goal at least. So not very good at all. And you know, it does raise the question, should we bring in Redpath? Should we bring in someone else to have that tall presence up forward? That just didn't seem to be there in this game. And then in the end, North Melbourne unfortunately won. We lost 9-7-61, defeating the Western Bulldogs 6-9-45. In a disappointing loss, there's a few positives to take out of the game. There's no doubting that. There is a few positives, but there's also some negatives as well coming out of this game. And it's not, it's not the end of the world. We're still a rising team, but we obviously, if we're going to get to the grand final, and we're going to have a grand final presence soon, we need to be winning these games and fixing up our sharp skills, because that's what let us down. And, some terrible mistakes, some terrible errors, some basic errors. Of course, the kicking was a real concern. This is, a team of AFL players. They should be able to kick by now. So, that was the final score there. The goal kickers for the Western Bulldogs, John Bontempelli, McLean, Dixon, Stevens and Dalhouse kicked singles each. No multiple goal kicker, which really explains the forward presence. No one had a forward presence up in the forward line and kicked multiple goals, and that's what we need. That someone, Stringer does it, not every time, but he does do it. We need Dixon and obviously Redpath back in the team to have that presence, as well as Boyd as well, to be able to get multiple goals and to have that that forward score that we've been having the start of the year. So anyway, the best players for the Western Bulldogs: Hunter, Biggs, Dalhouse, Stevens and Boyd. Well deserved best there for the Western Bulldogs. They did stand out very well, especially Hunter, who had a very good game. So a disappointing loss, a loss that was by 16 points. There is some negatives, there is some positives. Let's go to the votes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, time for the votes for round 6 v North Melbourne. This is for After the Dogs Raw Best and Fairest Award. Shane Biggs got 1 vote after his 27 disposal game. He had a good presence in the game and had a real influence on the game for our club. So he got 1 vote for me. 2 votes went to Matthew Boyd. He was outstanding in this game, got the second best highest disposals in the game. In fact, just for the record, the first 6 leading disposals of the game all went to the Western Bulldogs. How outstanding is that? And we lost the game. So just a bit of a stat there. But Matthew Boyd, he had 33 disposals, 21 kicks. He also had 8 marks up in the back line, or some of them were up in the back line at least, and had a good backline presence and really did have a good presence in the game, as well as Shane Biggs. So Matthew Boyd got 2 votes, and Lockie Hunter, who had the leading disposals of the game, that was 44 disposals. He got my 3 votes. Outstanding player at the moment. He's in probably his career best form, starting to hit his peak a little bit as well. He's still young. I remember a few years ago when they came down to Aurora and played against Hawthorn, I think it was 2013 or 14, he was actually out of the side as an emergency. At the end of the game, was able to get a photo with him while he was running laps, of course, because he didn't play the game. So he's a very good player. He's emerging as a talent who's on the improve, and this game just proves that. So Lockie Hunter got the 3 votes. Now let's have a look at the leaderboard after round 6. Now Lockie Hunter leads with 4 votes. We've then got on equal second Shane Biggs, Matthew Boyd, Kobe Stevens and Matthew Suckling on 3 votes. And then Mitch Wallace is on 2 votes. Okay, now just staying on the topic of the Best and Fairest Award, you might remember that I haven't actually given or added my votes from the round 1, 2 or 3 games. Of course, this show only started the game, of course, after round 3, heading into round 4. So I haven't given my votes for round 1, 2 or 3. I know I said on episode 1 that I wasn't going to include those votes. I've changed my mind. I'm going to include the round 1, 2 and 3 votes in the Best and Fairest Award for this show. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be adding my round 2 and 3 votes. In this episode, I'm going to add my round 1 votes to the leaderboard. So here is my round 1 votes for the match against Fremantle. That was where we won 103-38 at Etihad Stadium, of course, on a Sunday afternoon. My first vote, the person who got 1 vote was Shane Biggs. Jason Johannesson with 2 votes, and I've given Jake Stringer, who had a 5-goal game in that match, I've given him the 3 votes. Definitely the best 3 players on that match, or in that match, in my opinion. So let's have a look at the leaderboard now. After the round 1 votes have been added, I've got Lockie Hunter and Shane Biggs level on 4 votes. We've then got second Matthew Boyd, Kobe Stevens, Jake Stringer and Matthew Suckling, all joint second on 3 votes. And then third, Jason Johannesson and Mitch Wallace level on 2 votes. Next episode, I'll add my round 2 votes, and then the next episode, I'll add my round 3 votes. So that is the After the Dogs Raw Best and Fairest Award. Okay, time now for one of my favourite segments in the show, and that is the stats wrap-up, and this is for after round 6, of course. I'll start with the leading goal kickers like I normally do. Jake Stringer still leads the leading goal kickers on 11 goals, even though he had a goalless game against North Melbourne. Of course, Marcus Bontempelli is joint second with Toby McLean on 8 goals each. Of course, Toby McLean got a single on the weekend v North Melbourne. He is emerging as a really good young talent as well, so watch out for him. And then joint fourth, I've got Tom Boyd and Luke Dalhouse, both on 5 goals. Tom Boyd able to maintain his top 5 position even though he's out with a shoulder injury. The leading disposals, Lockie Hunter, who currently leads the best and fairest leaderboard, is on 198 disposals, leading the leading disposals. Jack McRae is actually the next best at 166 disposals, so you can see the big gap there between Hunter and McRae. Boyd is third with 161 disposals, Shane Biggs on 155 disposals, and then we have Kobe Stevens, who also had a good game against North Melbourne. Very unlucky to miss out on the votes in the After the Dogs Best and Fairest award for this week. Kobe Stevens is on 154 disposals on 5th position. Leading marks, Matthew Boyd is on 48 marks and leading the leading marks for our club. He's just a great marker of the ball, isn't he? And we've seen that on the weekend once again. Marcus Adams is the next best on 41 marks, followed by Lockie Hunter, of course, on 40 marks. And then Dale Morris is on 37 marks, followed by Shane Biggs on 36 marks. We then have the leading tackles, Luke Dalhouse on 38 tackles, leading the tackles there. Kobe Stevens on 32. We've got Jordan Roughhead on 25, and then level on 4th on 22 tackles is Jack McRae and Tom Liberatore. And now we finish the stats wrap up with where we stand on the AFL ladder after round 6. This is for the 2016 season, of course, if you don't know what year we are living in. And I'm hoping that you know what year we live in. But anyway, the Western Bulldogs have fell to 4th position on the ladder. Of course, the loss and then obviously the big wins by Geelong on the weekend, and then the Sydney Swans beating the Brisbane Lions. They've been able to move forward up to 2nd and 3rd, and we have fell to 4th. Of course, we could have had that first place after round 6 because, well, we had a better percentage than North Melbourne, and obviously we would have been level on points with them with the one loss apiece, but that didn't happen, and we fell to 4th. We're still in the top 4. We have a good opportunity to bounce back next week against the Crows. They won't be easy, but if we can bounce back, we might move back up the top of the ladder. But currently, we are 4th after round 6. Okay, time now to get on to our overview of the VFL match on the weekend that Footscray was involved in. They were versing Werribee at home at Whitten Oval, or as it's known as Victoria University Whitten Oval, if you want to use the sponsor name there. Good sponsors there, of course, the Victoria University. We thank them for sponsoring the Whitten Oval, and of course the Western Bulldogs. You know, we haven't been very good in the VFL in the last couple of games. You have to admit, we've been pretty poor. We've been in the game in the first half, slipped away in the second half, and lost the game, and that is just simply not good enough in this type of football. And, well, this was just probably the worst game of the year, in my opinion. We were down at quarter time pretty heavily, 1-1-7 to Werribee 6-4-40. It just went from there, really. We were able to kick 4 goals and, well, half a dozen behinds in the second quarter. But, of course, Werribee kicked more goals and more behinds and led at half-time, 70-38. And then they led at three-quarter time. And in the end, Footscray lost the game, 12-13-85, defeated by Werribee, 19-13, 127. The goal kickers for the match for Footscray, Jamison kicked 2, Watt kicked 2, Honeychurch, Goats, Redpath, Hamilton, Wallace, Dalglish, Statley, and Taveski Beckwith. I hope I've pronounced that right. Of course, some of the Footscray players I don't know because, of course, they're not on the Western Bulldog list. But anyway, that's the goal kickers. And then the best players, Dunkley, Honeychurch, Webb, Dalglish, Cordy, and Russell, all getting on the best players for the Footscray Bulldogs. Redpath getting a single there. Is that enough to put him into the side this week against the Crows? Who knows? I said last week, just give him one more week. Of course, we want consistency in the side. Is he going to provide that? Maybe it's time to bring him in. Of course, Boyd this week is probably unlikely to come back into the side. It probably will be against Melbourne where he returns to the senior side after that injury. So, could be wise to put Redpath into the Western Bulldogs squad, but not a very good loss there for Footscray, and we really need to pick ourselves up So anyway, let's have a look at where we stand on the VFL ladder. So currently we are on 12th position on the VFL ladder. We verse North Ballarat in our next game. They are 14th on the ladder, so just a couple of places below us. Let's have a look at the game information for that. Footscray v North Ballarat, Sunday 8th of May, 11:40am at Victoria University, Whitten Oval. So, of course, if you've been at the footy on Saturday night and you live in Melbourne and you're not doing anything Sunday, then get along to Whitten Oval and support our VFL side, because we need to bounce back and win this game. And, well, if you can't get there and you're in Victoria, then you can watch it on 7. And that's only in Victoria, so unfortunately, if you're out of Victoria like me, then you won't be able to watch it, although I think I can watch it on 7+. But anyway, that's our next match in the VFL. Let's get on to the injury board after round 6. Okay, time now to have a look at the injury board after round 6. We've still got a pretty big list of injuries, so let's have a look and see how they are tracking. We start with Tom Boyd. A lot of people expecting him to come back in this week. He might miss this week against the Crows and come back next week against Melbourne, so the estimated return, just 1 or 2 weeks at least. I'm not sure if he'll come in this week. I don't think he will. I think it's highly unlikely. So we should see him against Melbourne, though. Definitely he should be right and ready for that game. Caleb Daniel, we believe a test is in need for him to be fit and ready to go for the game against the Crows. So he could come back into the side against the Crows this Saturday night. Nathan Hovat still 2 or 4 weeks away with that ankle injury. Jason Johannisen with that hamstring injury, still about 8 weeks away. That's the estimated return. Of course, last week we saw him back on the training track. Don't look into it that much because, it's good he's back on the training track, but he's not doing anything heavy. So still a very, at least 2 months away, let's just say that. Also, Matthew Suckling is... of course, on the injury list still as well with that ankle injury. 3 weeks is his estimated return. Could be earlier, but you'd think the minimum is definitely 3 weeks at this stage. Clay Smith is indefinite, but maybe round 12 return. That's what we're hearing. And then, of course, Rourke Smith indefinite. Robert Murphy, Pruden, we know that they have season-ending injuries. So there you go. That's the injury board after round 6. Time now for one of my favourite segments on this show. I have a few favourite segments on this show, but this is definitely one of them because it has my name in it. It is called the Bevis Burning Question. It is where I get to speak my opinion on a question that I decide to ask, and then I also get to hear the opinions of everyone else in the forum and so on. So my question for this week is, should Luke Beveridge reteach the basics of kicking a Sharon at training this week? I think he should. I think, if you can't kick directly in front of goals with, a simple drop punt, then you have a problem and you need to be taught or retaught the basics of kicking a football. It is, it might be hard for some players. I don't think it's that hard. And we all make mistakes. We all have that kick that is a shocker. I'm sure every player in their career has had a shocking kick in a game, and that's fine. Mistakes, we can forgive them. Everyone makes mistakes, and that is fine. But when you're kicking badly in a game constantly, it's not good enough, and you need to reassess it. And Luke Beveridge may just need to remind his players, possibly not all of them, but some players, how to kick a ball. And that's what training is for. That's what training is for. So I'm sure Jordan Roughead will be in front of goals this week at various stages of training this week. Just in that position where he missed, and just practicing so it doesn't happen again, because it didn't cost us the game. It didn't cost 100% of the game. It probably cost about maybe 20% of the game. But if you can't kick directly in front from that distance and directly in front of goals, then you need to go back and, train and work on it. It wasn't just Roughead. There was a few other players who, poor kicking, and, it makes me wonder, why do players in the AFL, it's not just our club, but every other club as well, have, why is there players in this competition that can't kick right? Travis Cloke's a fantastic example. We won't go into other players and clubs because that's probably not appropriate for this show, but, maybe Luke Beveridge just needs to work on the kicking and making sure that that's right and ready, because it is a fundamental basic of the game, and if you can't get that right, you won't get anything else right. So, yep, Luke Beveridge, I think he needs to just reteach the basics a little bit. Just make sure that all these players and everyone can kick a ball okay, because we don't want that bad kicking display in another game of football, especially against high-quality teams like the Crows this week. So that is my burning question. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Okay, time to have a look now at our Round 7 clash v the Adelaide Crows. This game on Saturday the 7th of May at 7:40 p.m. at Etihad Stadium. Saturday night game, the one of 6 games being played on Saturday throughout the AFL. And this is in fact our last game at Etihad Stadium until Round 11 v West Coast Eagles. After this game, we play at the MCG against Melbourne. We play at Spotless Stadium against the GWS Giants, and we're back at the MCG against Collingwood. That's a game I'm going to, by the way. So if you're going to be going to the match against Collingwood, then feel free to come and see me and say hello and make yourself known to me. I'd really much appreciate that. But anyway, getting back on track, on topic, the Western Bulldogs taking on a very good Adelaide Crows side. They're on 7th, but they probably don't deserve to be on 7th place the way they've played in the last couple of games. Of course, they lost against the Swans a couple of weeks... they won against the Swans, lost against Hawthorn, of course, last week on Friday night very narrowly, and then, of course, won against Fremantle, got a good win against Fremantle on Saturday. They've got some big guns, of course, Jacobs, Walker. They're another side who probably has one of the best forward lines in the competition. You know, they've got some big men. They've also got some great small men, Eddie Betts, for example, as well. But, you know, we beat them last year at Etihad Stadium by about 50-odd points. Of course, we lost against them in the elimination final at the MCG. That does hurt still, and I'm sure we want to get our revenge. So we're more than capable of beating them, but we need to be able to keep our defence structure and have a bit of a forward structure, something we didn't have against North Melbourne. We need to set our forward structure right. I doubt Boyd's coming in this week, so I'd like to see Redpath come in. Of course, a lot of people want Redpath in, so maybe Redpath should come in. I was hoping Tom Campbell would actually slot a place up forward and then Minson coming in, but that doesn't seem likely to happen. And of course, I know Campbell's a ruckman, preferably a ruckman or predominantly a ruckman, but I'd like to see him a bit more up forward. Definitely Dixon, I'd like to see a bit more up forward as well. And then, of course, Redpath, Stringer, and then, of course, Dalehouse up there as well. Would definitely be really ideal. So we just need to be able to, control the big men of Adelaide, be able to, have that flow that we had in the first, 2 or 3 games, which we kind of aren't having a lot of now. So, and that is probably because of the injuries. So, let's see what we can do. I'm confident that we can win this game. It's going to be a close game, I'm sure, but Adelaide won't be easy. So, yeah, get along to this game, and if you can't get along to this game, then it is on 7 and Fox Footy. I won't be at the game, but I'll be watching, and I'll be barracking very proudly with my Bulldogs gear on. And time now to end the show with questions in 3 minutes, a segment that I get to answer questions from the Western Bulldogs forum. If you're a Western Bulldogs fan and you're not in the forum, then go check it out and go join. The link is down in the description below. Of course, you have to have Facebook to join because it is a Facebook group. I love this segment because I get to answer all the wonderful questions from the wonderful people in the forum. So let's get the clock rolling. I've got 3 minutes to answer as many questions as I can, and I'm going to start the clock right now. I'll start with Foot's crazy. Call me Foot crazy, but do we need a psychologist to work with our players on their kicking for goal? Probably yes, to be honest. Looking at the Friday night display of our kicking, we probably do. But like I said in my burning question, Luke Beveridge just needs to go over the basics of training and just assure players to take maybe a bit more care. You've got 30 seconds on the clock. I didn't mention this in the burning question, but you've actually got 30 seconds on the clock, not 30 minutes, 30 seconds on the clock to get your kicking right and get your technique right, ready to score the shot. That should be a whole lot enough time to be able to correctly kick the ball. So Jordan Roughhead, there's other players who weren't kicking very good on the weekend. Luke Beveridge just needs to ensure the players how to kick the ball properly and just ensure to take that 30 seconds, all that 30 seconds. You don't have to start running until about the 3 second, 2 second mark of that countdown. So, yeah, I think just Luke Beveridge needs to, just ensure the players. The next question, if you could have a past player to be back playing today, who would you bring back? I tell you what, I'm going to say Brad Johnson because I love Brad Johnson. He's one of my favourite players of all time. Of course, I know we probably need another back player to replace Murphy or Suckling, so maybe I should be going with one of them. But I tell you what, Brad Johnson, my all-time favourite, I'd bring him back and slot him in the forward line and kick a couple of sneaky goals because that would be absolutely fantastic. Barry Hall, you'd love to bring him back. Well, you know, that was awesome where he came after the Swans joined our club. He was absolutely awesome. So maybe bring him back, I don't know. But anyway, why is Minnow not in the side? This is asked by Jeffy McPheen. By the way, Red WB asked that question beforehand. Jeffrey, I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'd love to see Minson back in the side. I still think he is the number one ruckman. I still think he's got a lot to give, but I think Tom Campbell, I suppose, because Tom Campbell's a ruck and forward and can do it sort of well, I'm not going to say perfect, but sort of well, then that's probably why he can't get in the side. So maybe Minson needs to improve his forward game. I don't know, but I think Beveridge wants to get a ruck and forward player as the ruck. So maybe that's why Campbell's taking his position. But I'd like to think Minnow can get back in the side at some point this season. I'd like to see him back in the side anyway. And if you watched last week's episode and saw my game plan and so on, I still kind of think that should happen. But anyway, that's just me. My last question is, I've got 20 seconds. Do you think because we've sustained multiple player injury that has really affected our game style and results in the last 3 matches? This was asked by Amber Rachel. Definitely, I think. You know, injuries definitely, how do I explain it? They definitely, you know, have a big impact on the team, especially when it's the high profile of Robert Murphy and Matthew Suckling. As the timer just goes, I'll just finish this very quickly. But yeah, I think Bob Murphy and Matthew Suckling has had a very good and big impact on the back line. Because they've been removed, it's kind of made us having to adjust. And, you know, Jason Johannesson out as well. You know, that running off the back line, speeding through the wing, doesn't have that at the moment. So we have had to adjust our game plan. It has affected our game plan. So we'll have to adjust to the players that we bring in. And, yeah, I definitely do agree with you there. I think it has. I think it has impacted, sustained, you know, multiple player injuries is not ideal. But, yeah, it's definitely had an impact in my opinion, and I think everyone else can say the same as well. Once Suckling gets back in, though, I'd like to think we can play a bit better with our game plan, because that's who we missed on Friday night, Matthew Suckling. And that is it for another episode of After the Dogs Raw. This was for after round 6. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Of course, don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe. I do so much other content on this channel as well. Of course, join the forum, because that's where this show basically is dedicated to. If you want to ask questions, go ask the questions in there on the post that I post each week, saying to comment down below your questions, because that's how you get your questions read out and answered by me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next week, I'm Jacob. Enjoy Saturday night against the Crows. Bye for now. Go the Dogs.